Welcome into WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. You're listening to After the Whistle, Loyola's premier sports talk radio show, airing every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Welcome into, once again, another Friday edition of the show. I am your host today, Jeffrey Bazzi, alongside my co-host, Jimmy Cody. Jimmy, how is everything going with you?
Everything is fine. I am happy to be here once again talking some sports with you. We're going to have a lot of guests on today about the League 3, so we're going to have a wide variety of topics to talk about. The game last night, the games this weekend. Obviously, a lot to talk about baseball too, with Aaron Judge coming back to the Yankees and Jacob deGrom going to the Mets and Jacob deGrom leaving the Mets, Verlander going to the Mets. So we got a lot to talk about, and it'll be exciting. Good show, I think, going to be coming up today.
Yeah, we got a lot of things to go through, like you said, but let's start with the game last night that happened out in LA between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Rams, and it was a wild game. And for a game that didn't really have a lot of hype going into it, it turned out to be very exciting, especially at the end. And the Rams ended up coming away with a wild 17-16 win. And Jimmy, it gave me vibes of that Monday night game that just happened a few days ago between the Saints and the Buccaneers, where the Saints, who were the road team, they're up 16-3 with 4-ish minutes left, 3-ish minutes left. They find a way to just blow the game and lose, and the Raiders are in that same position. They were the road team last night. They're up 16-3, and I believe the Rams scored with like 3 minutes left or something like that, and then they got the ball back, and Baker Mayfield, obviously, is the story here. He led the Rams all the way down the field to a game-winning touchdown drive, and they found a way to win, and they improved to a 4-9 record. That's just not having a great year. It's one of the worst, I think, years for any Super Bowl team. I just feel like the hangover has been real, and the injuries don't help either, but they've just been playing terrible.
I was say hangover, I don't think is it. I just think
no, they're just not good. I feel like early on it was more of a hangover because they were 3-3 and they were healthy, but now that they're just not good and they're just missing a lot of players, they've been a bad team. But I think this is all about the Raiders, personally.
Yeah,
I think for the Rams, it's about Mayfield just coming in and just really just doing a great job. I thought he was pretty good last night. Just seemed like the offense had more of a juice to it. But I think this is all about the Raiders. This is a game that they had to win to stay in that wild card race in the AFC, and they let this one slip away. So I'll just give you the mic. What did you see last night? How did the Raiders lose this game?
Well, I to be honest with you, I thought they were outcoached at the end. The defense for the Rams really stepped up. I thought the Rams made some good second half adjustments. And that was kind of why they put themselves in the position they were in to make a comeback, is because their defense was so good. Derek Carr had 2 picks, I'm sorry, that's just an embarrassment. Like, that is not a good team. This was a game the Raiders should have won easy. I mean, easy. They were up 13 points in the fourth quarter, and they lose this game, which is just unacceptable. And I sat here and I said the Raiders kind of starting to look like they were turning a corner a little bit. And I was shocked by the performance that they put up offensively. Listen, they only get the ball to Davante Adams 3 times. And I get that he has Jalen Ramsey on him, but Jalen Ramsey is not the same in this defense that he was. In other years or even last year, that's for sure. He's definitely not last year. To me, it also felt like the Raiders, could not get any big plays, right? Like, their biggest play was 35 yards. It was that Davante Adams catch. But at the same time, too, it's just like the turnovers in the quarterback performance when Derek Carr was just so anemic. It gave them no chance to win whatsoever. I really thought the Rams defense completely outcoached McDaniels and the Raider offense. I mean, just a terrible second half from the Raiders. Settling way too much for field goals. Instead of getting touchdowns. They really couldn't run the ball that effectively too, because they did get 99 yards, but that's on 27 carries. Like, they were from Jacobs. But that really is the key to their game, and they were not that great. I'll say this too. I thought Baker Mayfield, for what it was worth, looked really good, and honestly, I'm kind of excited to see what McVay can kind of do with him, because listen, I know they just signed Stafford to this huge deal, but the truth is he looked awful this year. He was terrible when he was out there. Now, I get he was banged up all year, but, I mean, it was like from the get-go that he was terrible. I mean, if Baker Mayfield balls out the rest of the season, I get that Matt Stafford would probably be the starter next year, but I mean, that could maybe be a tryout for Baker somewhere else, or maybe he just stays in Los Angeles. And I mean, listen, the team has looked better in on those drives than it has, and I don't even know how long.
Since
So
the Super Bowl.
yeah, I was gonna say like it really was a better offensive kind of team than I've seen in a while out of them, and they still only put up 17 points. But so I mean, the Raiders there's really nothing else to say about them except the fact that they are a joke. They're a joke. I mean, this is bad, really bad.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to what you said earlier. I think the settling for field goals really killed them last night. I feel like there was a lot of times where they got down in the red zone or close to the red zone.
Not to mention that red zone pick.
Just yeah, I was just gonna bring that up too. That pick at the end of the first half, that was a killer because I felt like they were definitely going to get points there, whether it would be 3, 6, or 7, whatever. But they got 0, and that hurts. And like you said though about Baker Mayfield, I just felt like they gave him a chance to really throw the ball and kind of play to his strengths last night. I thought the first play that he even made in the game was beautiful. A little play action, gave him a chance to sling it for like a 15 to 20-yard pass over the middle. I just feel like that's the type of pass that he can really make 9 times out of 10.
That's coaching.
And he's been good at that play, I feel like, for the majority of his career. He's really good over the middle, and he's got a decent deep ball. Sometimes it's overthrown or whatever, but I feel like he's a guy who can make a lot of throws, especially off schedule. And I feel like last night, even when he wasn't even in the pocket, I felt like he was running around a lot and making things happen. I just like what I saw overall. And you bring up an interesting point when you say that it could be a tryout next year for Mayfield, whether it's for LA or for another team. I agree with you. I think this is kind of his chance to rejuvenate himself. And we thought that maybe Carolina would be that place, but
that place is an awful.
It did not work out, obviously. And now he's with the Rams. And I also thought it was interesting that the Rams were the only team to pick up a waiver claim on him. No one else claimed him. I thought the 49ers were interested because I saw a report there, but they wouldn't have gotten him even if they claimed, because the Rams, I think, were higher up on the waiver wire.
Mm-hmm.
So good for Baker, though, to get a chance. And he showed last night that he's still got some left in the tank.
Yeah, and did you see after the game too, the McVay, you know how he does those speeches after the game? You see him a lot last year and the year before when they were like winning games and stuff, but you didn't really see him much this year. But I was just surprised at how much Baker's teammates love him, because it seems like there's been mixed reviews about Baker. In Cleveland, obviously they got rid of him. They moved on from him. They got Deshaun, even though he was the #1 overall pick. And at the same time too, in Carolina, it didn't seem like he was the most beloved there either. I felt like he was, getting replaced by PJ Walker was, was tough for him. That was tough. I mean, for PJ Walker to take his spot, that was not at all what Baker Mayfield expected. But I was definitely impressed with the heart that he showed last night. Coming in with 2 days is very tough. And apparently too, I forgot to mention this, but apparently Matt Stafford was a huge help with the playbook to Baker. So I guess credit to him too for being a good teammate. It was really an all-around situation. But at the end of the day, I cannot stress this enough. McVay putting Baker in a position to succeed is ultimately what led to this result. And at the end of the day, if you don't have good coaching in this league, you're not going to win games. There's a reason why the Chargers have Brandon Staley as their coach and then Justin Herbert as their quarterback, and they don't go to the playoffs. Because of Brandon Staley. He's like the coaching is the issue there, right? Like we've seen them put themselves in so many bad positions year after year, especially last year against the Raiders in that playoff game. In the win or go home game. I'm sorry, in week 17. No, week 18 last year. Anyway, point is, coaching matters. We've seen Daniel Jones improve a bunch this year. We've seen countless guys. Geno Smith, right? He got a new chance on another team. He's doing great right now. We see Brock Purdy come in. You think Brock Purdy could just start on the Carolina Panthers and be doing this? No, it's not only it's the players around him, but it's also the coaching. And when you do have a good coach, like I really think that value cannot be overstated enough.
Right. And I think last night, if you flip it to the Vegas side, you look at McDaniels and he just did not coach very well.
No, he was completely owned in that game by McVay. And McVay is a defensive, he does a pretty good job with his defensive units. Like it just always has been over the year.
And the thing was, they probably did want to pound the rock with Josh Jacobs because they gave it to him 27 times. But through the air, they just weren't really a threat. The only time I feel like they were a threat was when they threw to Adams. And that was only 3 times. And those were pretty good chunk plays for the Raiders, but no one else really helped them out. And so I don't know if that's just the players not getting open, but I think that is the coaching because you're not really designing plays for those other guys.
Jeff, to go one step further off what you said, yeah, they had 3 catches to Devontae Adams, but they had 7 targets. They were trying to get on the ball. Derek Carr couldn't get it done. That was part of the problem.
Yeah.
The quarterback's got to be better. He was not good at all last night. And for Derek Carr, I'm sorry, like he's playing for his job next year because I feel like this is a team that they would move on from him if they could. You don't think if Brady was available, they would be like, oh no, like
Oh, I definitely
you're
think they
out
would
of here,
look at
Derek
it.
Carr. You think if Aaron Rodgers is available, they're keeping Derek Carr? No.
Yeah, I agree. It just felt like this season they haven't really gotten off to the right foot, and they just haven't recovered since. Yeah.
Yeah. So last thing I want to say about this too was, when it comes to Baker, I mean, realistically, like the Rams don't really have anything to play for because they literally have the Lions pick, or the Lions have their pick, right? So it's not like they're going to be getting a high draft pick. What are like reasonable like expectations you think for Baker going forward? Like, do you think like he can actually sustain this, or you think this was just a 1 game wonder?
I don't know.
Because there was some magic in that drive last night.
There was definitely a little bit of magic in the air. Maybe there was just this element of surprise where he comes in end of the first quarter, kind of just lights it up a little bit. And I don't know, maybe he gets a shot for the rest of the year. I think that's probably an assumption that he's going to start next week and probably moving forward because I feel like they just don't want to rush Stafford back because they're 4-9. They're going nowhere.
Oh, Stafford's done.
Stafford's
Yeah,
done.
he's not coming back.
Because I saw something
He's
where,
on IR.
yeah, right. I know that. I just saw something where they might have had him come back in week 17, but that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, at this point.
So
also-
maybe you ride him out and see what he has left. Because I don't know, based on last night, if he has more of those types of performances, I think all other teams will be calling for him because there's going to be some QB openings. I mean, there could be one in Vegas, like we said. There's other teams like probably can't even think of right now, but they're definitely going to have a lot of QB openings. But I think you kind of just see what he's got. And if you like what you see, I think you give him a call if you're another GM from another team. I definitely think this is a good chance for him to kind of show what he can do because we know what he can do. It's just hasn't really all come together for him throughout his whole career. So I think there's good things though that could be on the horizon.
All right, yeah, I agree too. All right, so let's welcome in a caller here. We have Mr. Sean Hemback here to discuss some Jets football. Sean, we were just talking about the Rams Raiders game last night. So if you have anything you'd like to add to that, the floor is yours.
Stop hating on Baker. Baker is him. That's all I'll say.
I guess so. I mean, after the comeback last night, we were just saying the magic was in the building.
It was a nice good drive right there at the end.
Yeah, imagine being the Raiders and giving up what was it, a 98-yard drive? Oh yeah, that was just disgraceful. Just disgraceful. No timeouts too.
Baker's just that good. He is him.
I guess so. All right, so let's hear your thoughts this week about the Mike White led Jets going up against the Bills.
It's gonna be a good game, Jimmers. It's gonna be a great game. I'm excited. I think Mike White's gonna shine. Just gonna to see how the defense does against that Bills offense there.
Oh, so you're actually more worried about the defense than you are the offense. That's interesting. Why?
I mean, when you have an MVP caliber quarterback playing, throwing similar pro caliber wide receivers, you don't really have to worry much about the offense.
Oh, I thought you were talking. No. I thought you're talking about the Bills offense. Yeah, they don't have to worry too much. Yes.
Oh no, I'm talking about the Jets offense.
No, the Jets don't have an MVP candidate at quarterback. They have a 5th round, 6th round pick.
He's already in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, well, whatever. Stop being ridiculous here. So the point I want to make is obviously you guys won last time, and I don't think you.
No, we lost. Oh wait.
No, when you played the Bills, you won the last game. Yeah. So
last week, my bad.
okay, my bad. All right, just so we're clear, the last time the Jets played the Bills, they beat the Bills, and it came as a shock to most of us. Why are you so unconfident this time if you guys were able to pull it off last time?
I wouldn't say unconfident, but anytime you play a team like the Bills or like the Chiefs, you can't be banking on a win. You got to be banking on a good game, or at least a good game or a loss. So I think it'll be a shot for shot.
All right, so
score a tutty, Bills score a tutty, that sort of thing.
all right, so I mean, I think the best way to attack the Bills personally is by running the ball, and that's kind of your strength. What did you think last week about this new kid, Knight, who played for the Jets?
No, Knight is him, Jimmy. Knight is him. He's good. He's very good. He's not Brees Hall. Don't get me wrong. He's not Brees, but he's a great replacement. He's probably our second best running back of the team, I think.
Oh, really? So you're okay with the whole Robinson not getting carries?
Oh, James Robinson sucks. He is terrible. He is just terrible.
So when everybody was gassing up that trade, and you really thought it was going to be the answer, it hasn't looked that way. Why has he been so bad?
He's slow. Can't break tackles. Can't make cuts. I don't think he's ever really recovered from that Achilles. He's not breaking through anything. He's running for 3 yards and getting tackled.
Okay, that's. I mean, listen, that's true. I mean, he might not have the burst of speed that he once had. I mean, he was only really that great for like a couple of years. It wasn't like he was ever like elite. So I guess the expectation shouldn't have been that high. Jeff, what do you think about Bills Jets on Sunday?
Well, Hemi, I was going to ask you. So you seem more concerned about the defense, and I was going to ask about the offense because last time you guys put up 20, so it's not a terrible number to put up against the Bills, but I think you're probably going to have to put up around the same amount of points, if not even more points. So do you think Mike White just has to throw through the air? Because he's done well with throwing the ball. I mean, he's thrown a lot of yards ever since he's gotten the job. So do you think they have to attack through the air or more on the ground? What do you think?
I think they're gonna have a nice mix. I mean, but I would say most of the yards will probably come through the area. And Mike White's a 300-yard game merchant right there. Likes to throw for a lot of yards, likes to hit the open receiver, likes to throw accurately, something Zach Wilson hates, all of those things. So I think we could see a Mike White 300-yard game again.
All right, so actually last year when the Jets with Mike White faced off against the Bills, it was a nightmare. I don't know if you recall that game, but
I recall gamers.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Why was Mike White so ineffective that time against the Bills? I mean, obviously, I know it's a different team and stuff, but he had looked good. So I would just be concerned. Hey, what if this guy falls off a cliff like he did last year? Because I think outside of Jets fans, that's the assumption that most people have. They're just waiting for Mike White to fall off a cliff.
Well, Jimmy, there are two reasons that would happen. Reason number one is he had a hand injury and he couldn't really grip the ball right, which he got during the Colts game the week before last year. And the reason number two is Mike LaFleur sold on your boy. So hopefully neither of those things happen this week, and I think we can see a Mike White masterclass performance right there.
I'm glad you brought up Mike LaFleur because his play calling last week against the Vikings, particularly in the last 2 minutes and those 8 tries on the goal line, was quote unquote, from me, a disaster. It was a train wreck. It was awful. I mean, you guys have 8 tries on the goal line and you can't get in. Why not go QB sneak when you're on the half-yard line that one time?
Because Mike LaFleur doesn't think that way. He's just a god-awful offensive coordinator, and his brother is just a god-awful head coach.
I agree. His brother is terrible. It's the whole family. Yeah, no. So, I mean, let's talk about those 8 plays because honestly, I thought that was a game the Jets should have won, and they kind of needed that game. Looking back on it, like if they would have had that would have given them such a nice advantage over those other wild card teams, And if they lose this one, I think they're really gonna wish that they had won the Vikings one. And Jeff, I think you would agree with that too. Is that the Jets could have had that game.
Right. I actually picked them to win, and I thought they were going to steal that game because I thought they really gave themselves a chance at the end. But like you said, LaFleur's play calling was not very good, and obviously the execution wasn't there.
So, Hemek, what would you like LaFleur to do a little differently in the play calls then?
Just design plays, get people open. Maybe try running the ball when you're on the 1-yard line. Maybe take out the wide receiver fades in the corner because those almost never work.
Sure.
I mean, QB sneak. That's how we literally scored that one touchdown. And didn't go back to it.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. What did you think too, though? I mean, I thought the drive that he was calling leading up to that was pretty good. I thought they did a really, really awesome job of getting Garrett Wilson the ball throughout that game. I mean, obviously he was open. There's no doubt he was open, and it was a matchup nightmare. Wilson was having a really good game. Do you ever think though that like when the LaFleur is like calling these plays, like it just almost seems like he always just tries to do like the opposite and like think outside the box. And by doing that, he just does something so stupid. Like that's what I think. He almost like outsmarts himself when he's like calling the plays.
I would agree with that. You know, he calls a lot of stupid plays. Like, remember last year there would always be like the wide receiver would come around, the QB would toss it to him, the quarterback would run down by the sideline and throw it back to the quarterback, and it would almost never work. It was just like, why are you calling it? You know, I think he tries to do
Too cute.
like, yeah, he's trying to be too smart. He's trying to get himself a Sports Center highlight, and that almost never works out.
It must run in that Shanahan like coaching tree where you just got to make like the whole game about yourself at one point. I think that must be like a
It's the
thing.
worst coaching tree ever. Shanahan's not even a good coach.
I disagree. I disagree. I
Yeah,
definitely
but
think
the mastermind who can't put up points in offense. That's what it is.
no, I think he's a
Every
good.
year, and then every year they've had like a bottom five offense in the NFL. Like their defense for getting them there. I mean, he's not a defensive coach. That's just me.
That's fair. That's fair. I think he does. I think he does a really good job when he has like not great quarterbacks. I'll say that. I think that's his strength is like working a game plan when he doesn't have necessarily the best quarterbacks. Because listen, obviously they took Trey Lance with high hopes and it didn't really work. But anyway, this conversation is not about the 49ers. This is about the Jets. So game Sunday, other than Mike White, like what are you expecting out of your defense? Because honestly, I think the biggest matchup here is Sauce versus Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, last time Sauce wasn't really on Diggs. It was more DJ Reed, but you know, I'm just hoping that the corners can shut down. You know, I don't mean it's tough to shut down Diggs, but I think they could at least contain Diggs and shut down Gabe Davis. You know, I'm worried about CJ Mosley versus Dawson Knox right there. Because CJ Mosley's just the worst.
Yeah, he's terrible in coverage. You're right. We've said that.
Well, you know, I mean, I think we can hope them to be
Now, Hemback. Now, Hembeck, I think Jeffrey, I've heard you say this, and I think maybe you would agree. You don't think that the Jet or the Bills are maybe as good as people have kind of put them on paper. I mean, that's kind of the thought that I have. Still think they're a very good team, but I don't think they're unbeatable by any means. Is that something you would agree with, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so. I think recently they've kind of been playing a little bit better, but I still feel like they're not this team where it's like, oh, everyone fears them anymore. I feel like coming into the year, they were a lot of people's Super Bowl pick for a good reason. I mean, they have a really good roster top to bottom, but I feel like this year, I don't know, Allen hasn't looked amazing. He's looked human.
Dumb turnovers.
Right. And he started out the year pretty well. I think he was the front runner for MVP. And then he kind of scuffled around the end of October and in November. But you look for him to kind of round into form as the playoff talk starts to heat up. But as the team overall, I feel like, I don't know, they're beatable. They have a good record. I think they're 9-3. I mean, they think they would have home field right now in the AFC if it started today. But yeah, they're beatable.
They're definitely beatable. So, Hemback, what do you think the Jets need to do if they're going to beat the Bills?
I mean, they definitely got to rush the passer. You know, you can't let Josh Allen have all the time there. Last game, that's what the Jets did. They were all up in Josh Allen's face the whole game, and he struggled pretty badly against the Jets. You know, I think the corners just need to not get beat deep by Diggs and Gabe Davis. I think if we can contain it to shorter throws, we'll be fine. I think Mike White's just got to beat Mike White. You know, cooking. You know, getting the open man. And I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we need good red zone offense this week. If we don't have good red zone offense, I think we're gonna lose again.
I like that. You definitely need good red zone offense. We just got done here, Jeff, saying how the Raiders kick too many field goals. Jets can't be, in field goal land again like they were last week, too.
No, if they're in field goal land, it's not going to end well. They got to, I guess, especially against the Bills, you got to finish against a team like the Bills. That's how you get 3 points every time.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go around really quickly here because we have about one more minute, and let's talk about let's give a score prediction here, and then I want to ask you something about the Yankees really quickly. And back. So give us your thoughts here. Score prediction: Jets, Bills.
I think I got the Jets 24, the Bills 21. The Jets sweep the Bills.
All right, I'll go Bills 24, Jets 10.
Okay,
And back or Jeffrey, over to you.
I'm gonna go Jets 17, Bills 27.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
All right, so it's Bills for ATW and it's Jets for you, Hemback. All right, so Hemback, really quickly, I want to get your thoughts on the Yankees. You know, obviously, big move. We got Judge back. Obviously, John Heyman was a jerk who reported the wrong news because he's terrible at his job and he's a joke. So just give us your thoughts there on Cashman's, stellar offseason move.
Well, I mean, it wasn't Cashman, it was Al. I mean, Al wants to finish the deal because apparently Cashman can't get something done with a blank check, but however, I mean, I mean, I don't think the deal's gonna age well, but you can't let Judge go. You gotta just give him whatever he wants, and he might suck 6 years from now, but it's something that had to be done, So, I mean, the move by Al, not by Cashman, Cashman wanted to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's why I said it because I know how much you hate Brian Cashman, obviously. Yeah, so the move that I want to see out of him is I'd like for the Yankees to get Carlos Rodon because I think if they had that adding to their pitching staff right now, it would be pretty good. It would be a lot better than the alternative, which was I don't even know because thank God Tyone is gone. I don't have to ever watch him again. So that's that. The only way Tyone ever wins is if we put up like 8 runs and he gives up 3 and we get lucky. That's usually a Tyone start for you. He gets all the run support. So that might be the one sad thing for the Yankees is they're going to lose out on some runs. But at the end of the day, I am happy that Aaron Judge was kept. Jeffrey, anything you want to add about Aaron Judge?
Yeah, I feel like this was a must-have for the Yankees. They had to find a way to keep him. And that tweet was really scary from Heyman that he was supposedly going to the Giants. But obviously that was not true. And he's back in New York. I think it's huge. And I think if they run it back with pretty much the same roster, they get some additions. I feel like they're right there with the mix with the Astros and these other teams in the AL because they've been close a few years now. And I feel like they're kind of waiting for that one breakthrough. And I feel like if they just keep knocking on the door, eventually they can go through.
Yeah, I hope so.
He's the guy that can really get it going. He's the catalyst. Starts with Judge at the top.
I agree. He is the catalyst. All right, Hemback. Thank you as always for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Emmy.
All right, have a good. Okay, all right. We can talk backyard another time. All right, so let's begin to talk about another team that has some impact on this show. Jeff, your team, the Philadelphia Eagles, has a big game this week against the Giants. So, why don't you give me some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so big one up at MetLife this week between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. The Eagles coming in at 11-1. They've ripped off 3 in a row since dropping their one loss to Washington. And I feel like the story here is Jalen Hurts has continued to prove to the league that he's for real and this is not just a fluke. I feel like he's kind of not just entering the MVP talk. I feel like he's been in the MVP talk the whole year, but I feel like he's kind of asserting himself the last few weeks. And I think that's been the one thing that's kind of stood out. And last week, I felt like the defense really showed up because the week before they gave up a lot of points to Green Bay. And I felt like it was a good bounce back performance, especially shutting down a guy like Derrick Henry. But coming into this game, this is a huge game for the Eagles because this is the first time that they will be meeting the Giants. And I think on the other side, you look at the Giants, they're sitting there at 7-4-1. They haven't won in, I think, 3 weeks. They're coming off that tie to Washington where they really could have had that win. So I definitely think they're going to try to bounce back. But I think the key storyline here is something that I heard this morning from one of my roommates, actually. Apparently, Saquon Barkley is, I don't know if he's questionable or he might not play.
Questionable, yeah.
Questionable.
Yeah.
So that's a huge storyline, I think, for both sides, but more so on the Giants, obviously, because he's their best player offensively. So they definitely want him to play.
All right, I want to welcome in now fellow Eagle fan, Eddie Stank. Eddie, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Jeff. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Glad to have you on once again.
Yeah, so obviously Jeff was just talking about the Saquon Barkley injury. Why don't you give us some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that would be absolutely huge. This week's another must win for the Eagles. The Beast only have to get 2-game lead on the Cowboys. We got to keep that intact. We can't blow the division. And yeah, that'd be huge. He's their best player by far, every line of the offense. So yeah, it may not be win the game, but that'd be super tragic. We need to win the game if he didn't play.
Yeah, so I mean, without a doubt, like Saquon Barkley, like you said, most impactful player. Both of you guys hit on it about how he's the Giants offense, right? Like it all comes from him. Without him, they're nothing. Well, I mean, I don't know if there'll be nothing, but we'll see. It's definitely not going to be the same offense, that's for sure. But what do the Eagles need to do, regardless of whether Barkley plays or not, that would make them successful in this game, Jeff? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I feel like Hurts needs to continue to attack through the air because I feel like recently he's been really good. I feel like AJ Brown really asserted himself last week, and I feel like others can chip into it. I thought Devontae Smith kind of had a nice game last week, so I would expect those two to kind of be the two main targets in the air. I felt like most times they can win their matchup, but I felt like even the schemes that Nick Sirianni is developing, I feel like those have been working. I kind of look for them to kind of go back to the ground game because I felt like recently the ground game hasn't been at its strongest point. I feel like there's some games where it's like, oh my God, they're rushing for 150 or whatever, and there's three guys with 50 plus yards. I feel like that's a great recipe, but I feel like sometimes they kind of ditch it a little bit and they kind of fall in love with the play action. I feel like they need to go back to just ground and pound, and then if they have to throw, they have to throw to mix it in. But I look for them to kind of go back to the run game as their primary first option on offense.
All right. I mean, I like a lot of what you said. I agree with that. They definitely should be focusing on the run because I think they do a pretty good job, especially with their offensive line. Eddie, what do you think the Eagles need to do this week to win?
But yeah, I agree with Jeff. A lot of it starts with the passing game. I feel like the Giants defense is going to definitely want to make Hurts throw the ball. They're definitely not going to want to have him going all over the place like he did in the Packers game. I feel like the Martindale and Dable is kind of encourage that kind of defense. Yeah, Hurts needs to throw the ball well. Quez Watkins is out this week. I'm pretty sure he's questionable. I don't think he's going to play. Dallas Goedert's still out. So, yeah, it's AJ and Fontes. He needs to pick up the slack. Maybe a little bit more from, maybe see a little more from Zach Pascal or Jack Stoll. But, yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm not too concerned about this game. The Eagles, yeah, just, yeah, I would like an even balance of the run and the pass, but yeah, they need to be in top of the pass again.
So you just said you're not concerned about this game at all?
I'm a little concerned, but.
No, so this is so after last week, you thought, I mean, because this is a team that beat the Titans. I mean, obviously, you guys curb stomped the Titans last week. It was not really like too big of a competition, and AJ Brown went off. But at the same time, like this is a division game. Like it's gonna be a tough one. You don't think?
No, I'm concerned that it's a division game, but like I would be pretty shocked if the Eagles lost the game. I'd be really.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be really disappointed too if my team lost to the Giants. That's for sure. But I mean, no, let's not call it like it is. Like losing to Daniel Jones is very disappointing. Yeah, but losing to Daniel Jones does kind of stink, and it definitely stings. That one sticks with you till about Wednesday. You know that loss. Yeah, that's not. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. You guys did lose to them last year. So who are you to come on the show and say, "Oh, I'm not worried"? I forgot about that. Oh, that was the Rager era in Philly, right?
The Rager era.
Yeah. The Rager era in Philly. That's what it was. So, all right. So you guys are talking about all the things the Eagles need to do. Well, what are you most concerned about what the Giants do? Because they do some things well. I personally think they're a very well coached team and they play to their strengths. You guys on defense, there's been games where you guys look awesome. And then there's been games where you guys, I don't want to say get a little lazy out there, but you don't bring it every time. And I think the Giants, being that they are so well coached, they might have a chance to keep it close. I mean, if Barkley doesn't play, I would really be shocked. But at the same time, if Barkley does play, like they could hypothetically run it down your throat. No?
Oh, 100%.
Whatever we did against Derrick Henry last week, I know we had Jordan Davis back. He didn't play as much though. Javon Hargrave's been great. Fletcher Cox been picking up the slack the last 2 weeks. We just need to shut down the run. The receivers are. Have you seen the Giants receiving core there?
Yeah, it's a bunch of Uber drivers. I'm aware. Hey, well, don't forget about Kenny Golladay too. For show.
But they can let the Giants just control the game with the clock, like like Washington did when they beat us. I know that's what the Giants how they like to play. They like to run the ball, they like to waste clock, and yeah, they like to smart defense, and yeah, we got to make sure they don't do that to us.
All right, so Jeff, what else do you want to add to this Eagles Giants discussion here? Any other concerns that you have?
Well, I think the key early on is to kind of assert yourself, especially with the run. I feel like that's the key. And I said that earlier, but I'm just going to emphasize it again because I feel like the Giants are going to come out kind of starving for a win because they really need a win to kind of keep pace with the other teams in that NFC wild
Not
card.
to keep
right?
pace, to stay ahead.
Stay ahead. And
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Because if
And
they can win this game, that'll give them. They need it to stay ahead of the Commanders.
right. And there's other teams they need to catch too. Like Seattle is another team that they need to catch too. So we'll see what Seattle does this week when they play the Panthers. But yeah, I think it just starts with that Barkley injury. If he plays, obviously that helps the Giants tremendously. I mean, he's the guy who can carry the load literally. You can give him the ball 25 times and you can do a lot of good things with it. But if he doesn't play, Daniel Jones and Daboll and the coaching staff, they need to find ways to get others involved.
Let Daniel Jones cook, baby. Let Daniel Jones cook.
And speaking of Jones, I think one thing that I'm not sure if they do this a lot just because I haven't watched too many Giants games in its entirety, but I think Daniel Jones running is a very underrated aspect.
He's a very good runner.
And I don't think they should use it all the time because it would kind of give it away just because, oh, we're going to run it with Jones again, and again. But if they can use it in certain situations and maybe, I don't know, maybe you surprise people 1st and 10 or even 3rd and 2, whatever. I feel like he's a really underrated runner. And I feel like that could be a secret thing that they could use against the Eagles.
Jeff, you're totally right. There has been times recently where he's had more rushing yards than Barkley. I mean, they're definitely going to use him in the run game. They have to get yards somewhere. They're going to have to move the football somehow.
Well, it's funny too, because you don't view him as a runner at all, but I feel like,
I mean, I do. I remember when he was timed as the fastest quarterback to run the ball, or the fastest player in the league when he fell against the Eagles.
That is true. That is true.
Never forget.
I'm just saying, in the grand scheme of things, you talk about Lamar and Josh Allen and others, but he doesn't really come up right away. I just feel like he does good things when he has the ball on the ground.
No, well, I feel like since they've been asking him to run, I feel like he's been turning the ball over a lot less, to be honest with you. That's just the thought.
And that's funny too, because that's been the kryptonite of his career. He's been a turnover machine, but I feel like he's definitely limited that this year.
All right, very much so. All right, so we got about a minute and a half here before we got to go to break. So, Eddie, I want to get your thoughts on the Judge move. We were asking Sean Hemback earlier when he came on as a Yankee fan. He was giving all the praise to Hal Steinbrenner. So the floor is now yours.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sean there. This is the first time as a Yankee fan, I actually appreciate how he got the job done. How bad Cashman got this to a point was actually crazy. He was apparently sticking on 8 years, $320 million, but was just not going to get the job done. And Hal got on the phone and asked Judge, what do you have to do to make him a Yankee? And the 9 years, it's going to probably be tough in the long run, but it's what they had to do. And hopefully they'll make him the captain.
Yeah, I agree too. I definitely hope that they make him the captain. And my second thought would be, I hope they surround him with good players so we don't waste away the talent that he is.
Absolutely. They need to sign Carlos Rodon and Andrew Benintendi, I think so.
Yeah, I think those would be moves that would definitely elevate their roster a little bit for sure.
Yeah, the thing is, apparently Rodon wants 6 years, $200 million, which always will remind me of the Patrick Corbin contract. But then when I think of that at the same time, it's the Patrick Corbin contract was horrible, but the Nationals probably wouldn't have won the World Series without Patrick Corbin.
They absolutely wouldn't have. That was actually the only time that he was good on the team.
Exactly. You got to weigh the positives and negatives.
Yeah, I agree for sure. All right, so we got to take a quick break. Eddie, thank you as always for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here and after the whistle, and we will be right back after this.
Welcome back to WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle with Jeffrey Bazzi and Jimmy Cody. We're back from our break. Now we're going to talk some more sports, and we have a very special guest on now. We have Colin Nosek. Colin, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful, Mr. Bazzi. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure. I've always wanted to be on, so glad for the opportunity.
First time, long time?
First time, long time, as they say.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you on. And I guess we'll start with this. We were looking through the NFL slate, and I know that your New England Patriots, they play Monday night, but we were looking at the Sunday games first, and we had a few games on our minds, and we wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts on them. We were going to start with the Ravens-Steelers matchup going on in Pittsburgh, a huge divisional matchup for not just the Steelers because it's the rivalry and they're kind of out of it, but more so for the Ravens
Whoa,
because
whoa, whoa! Steelers are not out of it, Jeff. Do you see their remaining schedule? Oh my God, they are not out of it at all.
Are they not?
I completely disagree with that statement, but I'll let you finish.
I was just saying that because of their record,
No,
but
I disagree. I think they could win out and actually make it.
Sorry.
They play the Ravens, Panthers, Raiders, Ravens, Browns. Those are all really winnable games. So I don't know if I was
sorry,
gonna say-
I had no idea that they had those games on their schedule. I was just saying that they were out because they're 4 and something, right?
5 and 7.
5-7 currently.
Oh, they're 5 and 7. I thought they were 4 and 8.
Yeah,
So
they've
that
been quietly like kind of getting their.
that's kind of my fault. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Thank you for coming at me. I really deserve that. But
coming at you.
anyway, that game I think is huge just because the storyline here is Lamar Jackson is injured. He's out, I believe, for this game. And I'm not sure if it's official that he's out, but
No, he's not playing.
I think Tyler Huntley has been announced that he's going to start. So, Colin, what do you see from this game? Because it's a big game for both teams.
And I hate to bring it up in this manner, Jimmy, but I see this Ravens game going the exact way that Ravens game went last week. I mean, if you look at the line at Vegas has the points total set at 36, they think it's going to be a 17-10 game or something like that. And I see it. I think it'll be a bad football game no matter what.
I agree with that, though. I think it's definitely going to be a low scoring because the Ravens' offense isn't, anything special, and the Steelers' defense, I think, is pretty good. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this is a huge game for
don't
both
know in
teams.
terms of picking a side on here. You obviously want to lean with the Ravens. You look at the record, you look at just the talent they have, but you're right. No Lamar, the dynamic of the offense completely changes. The Steelers looked comfortable the last couple times we've seen them on the field. They're winning football games now. So I really don't know. I would lean towards the Ravens, but the Steelers, obviously, they're favored in this one. They're at home. They can make it a game for sure.
And here's the thing too. Everybody was talking about how bad Kenny Pickett was. He has not had a turnover in quite a few games. I think it's like his last 4 games he hasn't had a turnover. The last time he really, I thought, played horrible was when they played the Eagles, which is like whatever. The Eagles have a good defense. They're a good team. But since then, he's quietly been pretty effective. He's been completing the passes that he needs to make. He has a pretty good connection, honestly, with George Pickens, their rookie receiver as well. And also he has a good connection with Freiermuth. And it's not like it's a great offensive line, but he finds a way to manage with it because Kenny Pickett is a little bit more athletic than we like to believe. I like the Steelers in this game. I just do. I think that they're a pretty good team, and they're starting to kind of find themselves on offense. So, Jeff, anything you would like to add to that?
I was going to see if anyone else wanted to chime in, but I would say this. I agree with Colin in the sense that this is a game where I would pick the Ravens if they had their quarterback playing, but they do not.
Mhm.
And I feel like they have more talent than the Steelers. I just feel like they're a more talented roster, but I feel like the Steelers are kind of gaining a little bit of steam. And I don't know. This is kind of like one of those pick 'em games, but I don't know who to pick. This is really tough.
No, listen, you know that these games are going to be very tough. But here's the thing. I think the biggest question is whether Ronnie Stanley plays or not. Because if Ronnie Stanley does not play, I'm very worried about the Ravens O-line. They gave up a lot of sacks to the Broncos. It wasn't like the Broncos had a difficult time with the Ravens offensive line. It was not very good at all. They were getting to the quarterback even when Lamar was in the game, even when Huntley was in the game. And honestly, we don't even do that good of a job with mobile quarterbacks. So I think Ronnie Stanley is the key here for them. And if there's anything that Nosik would like to add to that, that's all. The floor is all his.
No, I completely agree with you that when you said it earlier, it boils down to it. The Steelers in general have a pretty good defense. And if that O-line can't hold up, Huntley's going to be in for a long day. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a defensive battle. It's going to be a game that we're going to want to watch the front lines here per se. But you're right, Jimmy. Didn't even bring that point up in my mind, but I agree with that.
All right, so let's move on to the other, I think, big game of this week. That's not the Sunday night game, but it's the 425 game that's on Fox. Buccaneers 49ers. We got TB12 going against Brock Purdy. Nosik, what do you think about this?
Well, I was thrilled when we had that conversation last night about Brock Purdy, how he demands the respect in the huddle. And I think he is going to just flawlessly step into this role as the play caller here for the Niners. Doesn't really look like Jimmy G is going to be back soon. Obviously, Trey Lance is done for the season, so he knows it's his team. I think that kind of gives a little bit more confidence when you know you can't lose your job. You're going to be the guy. I like the 49ers here at home. The Bucks have looked very unimpressive, even in most of their wins this season. I got to roll with the Niners here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's going to be a close game for sure because my concern is how is Tampa going to score on San Francisco? I mean, Jeff, I mean, we just saw them struggle against the Saints, and that defense is okay, but I mean, I don't think it's like anything special. It's certainly not elite, so that's a concern that I have. I mean, I'm sure you have some as well, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up, but I was going to flip it first. I was going to say that Brock Purdy, he looked really good last week, but he's also going up against the Tampa Bay defense, who's pretty good. You forget that the Tampa Bay D is like pretty good top to bottom.
Well, they haven't been that great in pass coverage this year. That's been their problem. They've been getting beat on by passing teams.
That's true, and that also doesn't help when you're going up against guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and even Brandon Ayuk.
Christian McCaffrey.
Shout out Ayuk, and you know what I mean, who I'm talking about. But yeah, I feel like this is a game where I feel like Brock Purdy has the chance to kind of use his receivers to his advantage, and I think Tampa Bay does have a stingy D, but like you said, on the other side, Brady against that San Fran D is going to be tough, and I feel like every game the Bucks just put up 20 points, and I don't know if they're going to get to 20 this week because San Fran's D is for real.
That's for sure. They definitely are for real. Anything else that either of you boys would like to add to this game? All right.
Yeah, I'd just like to actually step back into that quarterback talk real quick, and just here looking at the way the Bucks have defended number one receivers this year. They gave up almost 100 yards to a bad Browns team with Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball. I know it's Brock Purdy throwing the ball, but Jimmy mentioned it that their corners really don't cover well, and that's something that Deebo Samuel and Ayuk are going to have to take advantage of because, as you said, I think it'll be a low scoring game. The Bucs defense is good in general, but their corners have been a mess this year.
That is definitely a concern that I have, and I'm glad that you reiterated it. I want to move on though until the Sunday night game because I still want to talk a little bit about baseball, some free agents baseball with you, Nosik. But Dolphins Chargers on Sunday night. I love the Dolphins in the spot. I mean, I don't think the Chargers are even a close team to the Dolphins at all. I mean, I think it's just a great quarterback matchup, Tua versus Herbert. That's why it's in Sunday Night Football. But I mean, how can you trust Chargers defense at all? Especially after last week, they just lost to the Raiders.
Yeah, this is a tough game because I feel like this is the game where Herbert, just because he is Herbert, he can make a lot of throws and make something out of nothing, where he could keep this game close for the Chargers. But I just think the Dolphins have way too much offense. And I think they're going to kind of come into this game looking for a little bit of payback. They were on the West Coast last week. They took a really tough one in San Fran. Even with Jimmy G going out, they found a way to still not win the game. But credit to that San Fran D as well. But I think this is a game where you can kind of see Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle kind of not just reestablish themselves. I don't think that's the right word, but I feel like, I don't know, they haven't really been talked about too much lately because they've kind of lost the buzz a little bit just because, I don't know, getting to that time of the year where.
Talking about the Dolphins.
Yeah, I just feel like they kind of lost their edge a little bit.
Last week was I think a game that a lot of people expected them to win, especially once Garoppolo came out. But the 49er defense shut them down. But this defense is not the 49ers defense at all. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the normal from the Dolphins that we've been seeing throughout the season. One other thing I want to talk about here is how effective the Dolphins are going to be when it comes to running the ball, because the Chargers are absolutely horrendous at running the ball. The Dolphins have to make sure that they run the ball.
They had the same issue last year, the Chargers.
Yeah, they have to make sure that they're running the ball in this game, especially since they added Jeff Wilson Jr. Their offense, I think, has done a pretty good job of running the ball. They got to make sure they're consistent with that. And, I'm sure McDaniel, he's going to look to change plays because he seems like he's a pretty aware coach of what's going well, what's not going well. I mean, you hear how much he's done for Tua throughout the season and how much confidence he's given him. So they definitely seem like they have a good connection there. So, I also too, I must mention, it is a home game for the Chargers. So that does make this a little bit more interesting in my opinion. But I still think it will be a good game for sure. But I'm definitely looking for the Dolphins to have a bounce back game this week.
Yeah, same with me. What are your thoughts on this game?
I would also like to add the whole bounce back aspect of it is that Jalen Waddle is non-existent last week because he was hurt for most of the game. And you already combine that with playing a very good 49ers defense.
They
I
also
think
didn't have
it's
Armstead last
less
week too.
about what Miami was doing and more about what San Fran was doing. As you said, I think they'll bounce back easily. I think Waddle will have his normal big impact. He actually just got upgraded yesterday to a full participant in practice after being limited Wednesday. I think there's going to be an absolute shootout. Look for one of those games like Rams Chiefs from that Monday night a few years ago. I think it'll be really high scoring, really entertaining.
It's interesting. It's interesting. All right, so Nosik, let's hear your thoughts about some MLB free agency here. Obviously the Xander Bogaerts move. I would love to get your thoughts about that and how you see that affecting the Red Sox.
The Red Sox were kind of in this weird in between bridge anyway, between trying to build a competitive roster and rebuilding. I think this move further steps them back towards rebuilding, but actually not too upset about it from a fan of the team, because 11 years is just way too long to commit to a 30-year-old shortstop.
Yeah, I agree with
You
that.
can't do it.
I thought you said it perfectly. It was the years that were the problem, not the money.
Absolutely. And I know there's always two sides to the coin, as they say. The Red Sox have taken this approach with their front office that they wait for guys to reach free agency. They can't do that. That's why they should try and lock up Devers some point this year. Xander went out and was able to see that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. You see how it works out for teams like the Braves, who lock up their guys 6, 8, 10 years in advance and have that roster built for the future. I think more teams are going to have to take that approach so they don't lose guys like Xander in free agency.
That's a good approach to take, but who's to say that Devers is going to want to stay if they didn't want to keep Bogaerts? I mean, I don't know how the team's going to be looking next year, to be honest with you.
The Trevor Story signing last year, I think, really helped. You committed 6 years to him. You know that you have all-star level talent, especially in the infield. You had 3 or 4 top 10 draft picks from their poor seasons, and they took infielders, shortstops, and second baseman on it. It's going to be about what route they want to go with. You can get a massive haul for Devers if you want to deal him at the deadline this year or deal him preseason, whenever you want to do it. But I think that's a decision that the front office really has to make and roll with before this season, and not wait and see how competitive they are. You're either going to be all in on keeping him for 10 years, or you're going to be all out and try and get the best package back for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the approach that you have to take because you got to do what's best for the team. Really quickly, Nosik, there's a weird line this week in the NFL, and I kind of want to hear what your thoughts are on it. So what do you think about the Lions being favored against the Vikings?
I think it is an absolute trap to try and get people on the Lions. The Vikings are the Vikings. People say they're one of the worst 10-2 teams of all time. I don't see it. Dalvin Cook is still a top 5 running back.
I say that.
Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the league. I mean, the Vikings are good.
They have a good offense. Yes, they have a good offense.
And the Lions, as we know, do not have a good defense.
That is true, but also the Lions have a really good offense. And, I mean, their defense has been better recently. So I don't know. I don't know if I like the Lions at all. I just think that it's a very weird line. It probably is something that I personally would stay away from if I was a betting man, wink, wink. But, at the same time, I just think it's worth discussing because I think it's just fun to talk about. Jeff, anything you want to add about the NFL or the MLB free agency talk?
No, I guess I would just say that there are some interesting games this week in the NFL. I think we hit on pretty much the big ones, but yeah, I think the MLB free agency, it's kind of been crazy because we thought Judge was leaving and then he wasn't. And then we see these other guys moving other places. And I feel like there's still a lot of chips on the table to be made. I feel like there's a lot of good names out there. We brought up Carlos Rodon earlier, but there's a lot of other names like Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson and some others who still yet to find new homes or stay with their existing teams. So I think there's a lot of other things to happen here.
That point you brought about other chips that are going to fall. I do think that Trey Turner deal for your Phillies was one of the worst things that could happen to the shortstop market because it set up everyone to get a paycheck. So now teams are really going to have to throw money, even at a guy like Dansby, if you want a top shortstop.
That's true, but I mean, at the same time, there's a lot of good shortstops in the league. Like, I think the Braves could replace Dansby Swanson and really, I think they would be okay. Like, that's just my opinion.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be able to get the best deal. And plus too, other teams who would be in the shortstop market, aka like a team like the Yankees, because they don't really have a great shortstop. They have prospects, so they're kind of like taking that cheaper route where they're like, we do have a future, and baseball's weird because even if you're a good team, you can still consistently develop talent and make yourself a good team because the minor leagues are just such a, it's like a dartboard. Like you're literally just throwing it, trying to find something that sticks and hits. But, you gotta really, you gotta be able to develop talent. That's the key. And the teams who are good at developing talent trust themselves and they trust the prospects that they have. And they don't always need to feel like they spend money. So that's what makes MLB free agency interesting. And, there's a lot of different routes you can take to make your team successful. That's what's great about sports.
Oh, for sure. And Nozick, I was going to ask you one more question, just to switch the topic for just 1 second. Your Boston Celtics are killing it, 21-5 on top of the not just Eastern Conference standings, but the NBA standings. What do you like so far? Because we've talked about how much of an offensive juggernaut they are, and they're going to get Robert Williams back at some point. So you think the defense would also take another jump? What do you like though so far from the Celtics?
I just like how smooth Tatum and Brown look this year. When they play offense on the floor in the past, sometimes they looked a little jerky, like they were trying to do too much. It seems like they're really developing into their own roles this year, where they're comfortable on the floor. They're willing to make the extra pass. You see it in games where the team will put up 35, 40 assists. They wouldn't do that in the past couple of years because Tatum and Brown wanted to control the ball so much. Now everyone's getting involved, and that's why the offense is flowing at such a high level.
Oh, I completely agree. I think it starts with those two, and I feel like the others can not only just create for themselves, but they can just follow suit. I feel like Tatum and Brown can really carry them all the way. They almost did it last year, and it certainly looks like they could do it this year. So is there anything else would you like to add, Nozick, to the show?
Yeah, actually, one more Celtics point is I think one of the most underrated signings of the offseason in the NBA has been Malcolm Brogdon. Obviously, they traded for him, and shooting just under 50% from three coming off the bench. And he's really what that team needed to take the next step. I know Celtics fans last year watching that team in the finals, when you had to have someone come off the bench and replace Tatum and Brown or Derek White, it was always a question of, can this guy actually play? And Brogdon can play. I think you see a bench like that, that's a team that's built for a championship. So that's been fun to watch too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's kind of that spark plug that they needed. He's another guy off the bench who can really get his own shot and get buckets. So I think he's been a great addition so far. But all in all, thank you very much for joining the show, Colin. We'll definitely have you on again soon. But thank you very much for joining. Your insight was greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming on, Nozick.
Appreciate it. Well, that's going to do it for us here on After the Whistle. We will be back on Monday, and we will see you then, and have a great weekend.